We're
TikTok,
here.
it's time to rock. Welcome to the show, folks. Welcome to the 5150. I was going to say ranking the tracks, Brad, but we'll get that right eventually. We'll become the ranking the tracks show, won't we?
We will eventually. We will. We will. And looking forward to it, actually, even though these have been really fun, these shows, but getting back to regular programming, that'll be fun as well.
Fantastic. Good to see you, bro. I know that you a little bit what's the word? Frazzled because you're a gig. You're in high demand, bro. You're in high demand. So and obviously high demand on this part of the YouTube universe too to join us here. So thank you, bro, for taking the time.
Always, Andrew. Always. Wouldn't miss it unless I've had a stroke or something like that.
Don't say that.
Yeah. And we've got the Rock Professor here too, folks, joining us as ever. Without his apparatus holding his head up, so it's good to see the head. The head is,
there it is. It's nearly
functioning without the apparatus.
Nearly gone. 5 more days I'm supposed to wear it, but I'm wearing it a bit less. Because Friday I go and have the last meeting with the surgeon just to get an X-ray, just to make sure it's all right, and then I can throw it in the bloody. When I went, he said to me, "Have you given it a name?" I said this, so yes, I'm going to tell him I've given it a name. A lot of swear words.
Fantastic.
Which Mr. Pottymouth would be straight in with, but I'm backing away from it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to driving again. That's what I'm really looking forward to doing.
I bet. It's amazing how much you miss driving until you haven't driven for a while.
The freedom. It's the freedom, isn't it? You get out.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
I've had to get all my shopping delivered for 12 weeks.
Oh.
But you know what? You look your jawline looks strong. You look like you've had, some surgery. You look about 10 years younger.
Well, yes, I've had this surgery. I've got the clips behind the ears.
That's what really happened, Simon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it's plastic surgery. Yeah, I need something to make me 10 years look 10 years younger. Keep up with you guys.
No, you're looking good, mate. Looking good.
After a lifetime of disillusioned living, dissolute living, I need to go and get myself tidied up.
No, you're looking good.
Fantastic.
Mate. Looking
good. So we're looking forward to this show. We're looking forward to this show, guys, which will be interesting. And we've had some good views on this segment of top 3 musicians that we've been picking over the last couple of weeks. So we look forward to seeing what happens with this one. I'm going to do a special shout out to Phil, who is a channel member here on the channel as well. He's a fellow Kiwi, and he's celebrating the fact that the Crusaders won the rugby championship here in New Zealand and Australia and Pacific last night. They were playing the team that I support, the Chiefs. So well done, Phil. It was a great game. And it hurts to lose.
Well done. Congrats.
What happens? Somebody's got to lose. Somebody's got to win. So anyway, Phil, I hope you're celebrating.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he will be. So the Rock Professor is going to do a shout out to all you fine folks soon. If you're watching on a replay, please go and subscribe to our channel, friends. While you're here and the co-hosts are talking, I'm going to put a link also to Brad's YouTube channel here for you guys to go and follow too, especially go and support Brad. And also, if you haven't already, I haven't been pushing this, guys, so forgive me for being a little bit sloppy, but we are available for your entertainment on Instagram. You can find Brad Cook Music. Brad regularly posts over there.
I try.
He boasts tremendous soloing over Jimi Hendrix backing tracks.
Yes.
The Rock Professor occasionally. John ZD351 Music. And our dear friend Zach Zedris, who we've got to get back on the channel soon, bro, for another ranking. But if you want to find out what he's doing, especially with his music, probably Instagram is the place. But I'll put a link to his YouTube channel here too.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
Right, shall I do a shout out? I'll do a shout out to the people. We've got Arvin. Good morning, Arvin. Thank you for all the lovely comments about my facelift. Yes, it's worth every penny. Dear. We've got Arvin, Phil Byers. Yes, good morning, Phil. Celebrating the Crusaders. Gretch Zeppelin. Morning, Gretch. Gretch Zeppelin. How much time do you think these guys spent talking about tone woods? We spent all our time talking about tone woods. It's in all the books. Jazz Thunder 50. Jim. Morning, Jim. Hope you're well. Ellen, of course. Good morning, Ellen. Hope you're on the up and things are good with you. So, I think that's everyone that's made a comment. So, morning all. We've got 13 watching. So, make a comment. I'll say hi. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, and we'll do, as I move into it, we'll do a shout out to this week. It was Michael Anthony's birthday from Van Halen, my bass player from Van Halen. So happy birthday, Michael Anthony.
Yes.
Yeah.
The mighty Michael Anthony.
Yeah. I don't know how old he was.
He's what I like to call the backbone of Van Halen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, seem to have been treated rather roughly in latter years by
71 years of age he is. So he's still out there rocking. Rocking with Sammy and enjoying life, and you know what I mean? Music's keeping him young. And you've never met a more humble gentleman than Michael Anthony in the music industry anyway. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
100%.
And while we're on birthday shout outs, Mr. Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney, had a birthday this week. So, let's wish Paul, Mr. Paul McCartney a very, very happy birthday. I mean, we all love the Beatles. We're all big fans. He's 83 years young. He's still out there gigging, still out there, flying the flag. And, he's, like I said, I saw him a couple of years ago now, nearly, and still, putting on a 2.5, 3 hour show, guys, at his age, and he's a born entertainer, and I think the music's keeping him young.
Yeah, I agree. Did you see him playing with Bruce Springsteen?
Yeah.
My favorite thing is Bruce Springsteen is standing there with this massive grin on his face going, look, I play with the Beatles. My God, look, no, my dream has come true. It's like absolutely fantastic, that picture of him just grinning from ear to ear going, I'm a one of the great rockers, and yet I'm a kid. My dream has come true playing with Sir Paul McCartney. But I thought that was lovely. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And morning, Tony Bowen. Morning, Tony. Hope you're good, mate.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hi, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah. So happy birthday, Paul.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be coming back with the Beatles show soon. We'll find a subject and get together. And we're actually talking a little bit, Gretch Zeppelin, before we went live, about one of the collected works of the Beatles to rank whether we do the Masters or the #1 album that came out in 2000, because there's a lot of songs on those albums which aren't included on the proper albums that we'll probably never get a chance, Simon, to talk about on the show unless we do those albums, and we generally don't like doing greatest hits packages. The only one that we did was for Paul McCartney, remember? Last year or the year before for his birthday. So we've only done, we generally don't do it.
An exclusive group currently of one.
Yeah. No, that's that'd be a good one. That'd be a good one, I think, to do.
Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, good to see you, boys. Thank you for the shout outs. And I suppose one of the great things about, these last couple of weeks, Simon and Brad, from my perspective, talking about these great guitar players, I've been listening to a bit of music in preparation, kind of just in the background, Brad just sort of hanging out there and just being part of it and sort of, and reading a little bit about, what these guys generally have to offer, because sometimes you forget, a little bit of what their contributions are. And I'm glad that we've picked these guys, because if there's a starting point on a journey, and every journey has a starting point, doesn't it? And I think the journey for us, when we talk about this type of music that we like, British electric blues, music inspired by blues music, Simon and Brad, the go-to guy for 100% of everybody that we've spoken about is this guy here, Robert Johnson. So I've probably been lucky enough, folks, to pick the easiest guy to talk about, because, there's a lot of information out there for you guys to go and check out. And, I'm not going to give you a lot of biographical information. You can go and check that out. The Wikipedia page is pretty good for information. I've checked that out. But I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations before I talk about him. This book here, Escaping the Delta by Elijah Wald, is probably the best. It's a biography, but it analyzes every single song that he recorded. So if you're into the music and where it came from our perspective, this is the book.
Wow.
But all the biographies on him are outstanding. And there's another one that came out, probably the first, that's called Searching for Robert Johnson by a guy called Peter Gorelnik, who's a famous author.
Right.
Yeah, it's only a thin book, but if you pick up a copy, and it'll give you a bit of an idea, Brad and Simon, of what this guy was, because to be fair, I had no idea. I was listening to the music when Eric Clapton, Brad, was talking about Robert Johnson, when Keith Richards, Simon, was talking about Robert Johnson, and Mick Jagger and Peter Green was talking about Robert Johnson, and Kossoff and Jimmy Page. Do you want me to carry on with the list, guys, or should I just end it there?
Carry on.
The list keeps going, guys. The list keeps going.
Ronnie Wood just came out recently and, talked about this album in particular and what it meant. And, for me, when I went back and listened to this on CD, the collected works, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of understood where these guys were coming from. It took a while, Simon, to listen to. It took a long time, actually, for me to appreciate, if I'm honest, because it's something that you're not used to hearing. It's just basically one man, Brad, and a guitar on these recordings. And it now it transports me to places, I get appreciation now for it. And we've got Jonathan Nicholas here in the chat, another good friend of ours. I did a show with him. I interviewed him, who is a Robert Johnson nut. He's a fellow Welshman. Tony, you might remember him. So so Robert Johnson, for all of us, Brad and Simon, I'll pass it on to you, Brad, after, we'll come back to it. But, Robert Johnson is certainly the first guy that I heard Eric Clapton and Keith Richards say, you go and listen to these guys. And I did. Brad.
what more can I say, Andrew? You've summed it up pretty well. I mean, I discovered Robert Johnson really because of Eric Clapton. That was my, introduction to Robert Johnson, really. Eric opened that avenue up for me. I went back and discovered, like you, Andrew, it took a little while to actually appreciate maybe more so the purity and the real, I guess, channel of the blues through listening to Robert Johnson, more so than listening to, say, Cream playing Crossroads, like listening to Robert Johnson playing and hearing in his voice, in the delivery of the performance, there's a certain amount of angst, pain, for a young man too, to be going through. Obviously, what the topics they were singing about, like Robert Johnson, for example, a lot of his songs were based around pretty simple things, guys. Like, that's what I love about the blues. They're not very big, complicated topics. You're going back to a period in time when, slavery, segregation, everything like that. They had a hard life, and they lived hard too. They lived hard, and you can hear that in the performances, in the complete recordings I've got on CD. And this week, like, I've really been listening to Spotify because all my CDs are packed away at the moment. But listening to Spotify, and every time I listen, I'm still amazed that it is one man vocals, guitar with his own timing. I can't explain it. What we consider timing, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Like, our timing, if I keep that going, I can talk, I can do other things and keep that timing going, where they have their own, or Robert Johnson had his own timing, where to syncopate, where the vocal came in accordance to what he was playing on the guitar. When, say, someone like Clapton would cover, Robert Johnson, his vocal phrasing would be different, obviously doing it Eric Clapton's way. But going back, listening to Robert Johnson play his songs, it kind of made sense in a way why Eric did it the British way, like he did it that way. Like, there's no way that you could try and replicate what Robert Johnson was doing. I guess, for a lack of better ways of putting it, it's like ZZ Top picking a song to cover, like Foxy Lady, and they make it sound like ZZ Top because that's all they know how to do. Like, there's no way ZZ Top could play Foxy Lady like Jimi Hendrix. Eric Clapton, there's no way he could play Robert Johnson like Robert Johnson. But you can see where guys like Eric Clapton and all the ones you mentioned, Andrew, that were, disciples of Robert Johnson's music and the blues, would definitely have got that influence from. But there's a definite cut you can hear every time, like, a Robert Johnson song is played. I'm just trying to think of one in particular. Crossroads, but Hellhound on My Trail. It's got like a chilling momentum that goes on, and when people have covered that, they're not really getting it because it's coming from a place where he lived it. Does that make sense? I can't really explain it, but Robert Johnson lived the blues and he performed it that way. And I love that purity of the blues coming through, which is something that, coming full circle, what I'm talking about is that I actually now appreciate more than I did when I first started listening to Robert Johnson.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Simon, I just want to do a special shout out to Helene. Thank you, Helene, for the super chat. Means a lot. Appreciate it. I just want to back up a little bit of what you said before we pass it on to Simon. Brad, you know, one of the great things about Robert Johnson's life, and I do urge people, if they're interested, you know, the music is really great, really, really cool. Please go and check the music out. But if you want to read some of the biographies, or indeed check out a documentary on Netflix, there's a documentary on Netflix on the life of Robert Johnson, which is pretty good. And it's interesting because this is a guy that was a traveling musician, one of the first guys in the 27 Club. You know, he passed away when he was 27. And there's a lot of theories about what happened, about how he passed away, which is always an interesting conversation. But one of the interesting things that came to my mind that I didn't know about until I read this book here was that Robert Johnson, being a professional musician, wasn't just playing the blues, which is what I always assumed that he was doing, Simon. But in actual fact, you know, he could play country music as well, and he could play a hillbilly type of music because that's where he went to earn his living. So, and he wasn't just playing in front of black audiences in a jute somewhere, Brad, you know, or a gin hut. You know, he was playing in front of and this guy here thinks too, mixed audiences. You know?
Yep.
So yeah, you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting story, Simon.
It is, and I think it's a great point you make, and that point that these guys were the entertainment for the people around them. You know, you can't go and play, as you said, a juke joint or in a dance, or whatever, and just play Crossroads all the time. You know, it's like, you know, you have to play other stuff that people are going to get up, dance to, and, you know, feel good about it. So I think, you know, that the fact that, you know, he only recorded 29 songs, you know, are actually recorded, you know, that's only a very small part of actually his live, you know, set list about what he could do, because, you know, if you're playing out, you can't just play the doom stuff, can you? It's just not going to work. And I think it's really important that we recognise that what's recorded is a small part of his repertoire, not his complete repertoire at distance. And, you know, whatever else he had to play, you know, playing in clubs and whatever, bars and things, you know, juke joints, you know, the repertoire was a lot broader than that. And you know, I think that you know, it's. I'd also say that the recordings, and, you know, that's what we're listening to. They do have a kind of spooky, otherworldly quality to them, don't they? It's completely helped by the slightly dodgy recording. You know, the crackling, and they kind of, it feels like it's coming through from another place and another time completely. It's I mean, I feel like those things, and get onto him, but, you know, Charley Patton's the same. You know, they feel like they come from another world completely, and they're sort of coming through the ether and sort of, you know, through some sort of weird crackly portal that things. But I mean, I first came across
Simon, and that adds to it. That adds to the
atmospherics. You know, there's a you know you know, CDs, they're right in their place, but actually a bit of crackle gives it atmosphere and a sense of place, doesn't it? In a way that you don't. You know what?
Arvin makes a very good point there too about hot tamales when they're red hot. Jazz chords, exactly.
Yeah. See. Yeah. Well, I mean, jazz and blues are, you know, we forget, don't we, that then in the 20s, and we're talking about, you know, when these guys were, you know, late 20s, early 30s, you know, in the 20s, there wasn't really separate blues and jazz. It was, you know, you go and listen to Louis Armstrong's Hot Five, they're playing blues basically, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, and using jazz instruments, but all that New Orleans stuff is all based on the blues and things. They're all called, you know, Basin Street Blues or whatever that, you know, people are playing. So I mean, it's very, you know, you feel like two things were very closely aligned, and maybe gone bit away from each other since then, as we got as we got into sort of more modern things, And as Jonathan says, they clean them up and car horns in the background. It's fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, that Centennial collection is fantastic. So go and listen to that, and that's all available on digital as well. But you go and listen to that in comparison to what the first generation of electric blues guys were listening to, Simon and Brad. And this is why I got this, because this is the album that, Brad, you traveled 4 hours on a bus to listen to, bro.
Yeah.
Never mind the girl down the road. You were on a mission, bro.
I was more interested in music, mate.
Good. I'm very glad. Very happy to hear that.
But that's. I mean, I can remember hearing that. I can remember playing that in the record shop when I worked in the record shop. That's where I came in, King of the Delta Blues. That was the Robert Johnson album. I think it was the only one out. I mean, it was the only one you could get. When there were 12 songs on it or whatever. Yeah. Extraordinary, amazing. Yeah, still amazing. So I just say hello to Jonathan Nicholas, who's not a new name to me. So Jonathan, thank you very much. And Helene as well. Thanks, Helene, for your super chat. It's very kind. Albert,
Jonathan's been on the channel before, Simon. I've interviewed him. He's the Welsh Robert Johnson guy.
Was it last week?
Oh, no, about 2 years ago.
Sorry
I think it was on the channel.
That I've forgotten so long ago. But anyway, good morning and welcome back. It's very nice to see you. Yeah.
I just know everybody, Brad.
He knows all their names, birthdays, names of all their children.
Andrew's a real socialite. He knows everybody and everything about everybody,
That's right, mate. Yeah.
Frankly, just showing off. He's just showing off. Greg, you should stop it now.
Again, I just want to reiterate that point, though, before we toss it over to you, Brad. And there's going to be obviously similarities with what Robert is and what he did with the other artists that we're talking about. But I like the point that you made, Simon, about how, these guys were the full package. They weren't just blues musicians. And, for a lot of people that I know that I've spoken to in the recent past in my musical connections with people, it's been an interesting point where people haven't thought about that, Brad. That they've always thought of him as being this, the epitome of the guy that Clapton talks about, the guy with the guitar, with the acoustic guitar, taking on the world, Simon.
Yeah. And that Netflix special that you mentioned to Andrew, I think that's something that is worth watching if you're interested. It's very cool. It's a cool little what would you call it? Documentary, bio, what a little
biopic.
Biopic. But it's pretty cool. But it's definitely worth watching.
There we are. Was that one of three? Is it 2 photographs of Robert Johnson? 2 or 3? It's not many, are there?
No, it's not many. I don't think.
Then as Arthur Parsons says, they're fantastic in that, dressed up in their suits, Homburg, cats and stuff. There's a great portraits that they did.
Yeah, you can see how long his fingers were and all that too.
Yeah, because he suffered from this thing. I don't know what it's the name of it, but it's on the Wikipedia site, and this guy here talks about it as well, where you have abnormally long limbs, and he apparently had that, and that's probably one of the reasons that gave him a weak heart and a weak stomach too, Brad. But you're right. If you have a look at this picture here, and I remember Keith Richards talking about it, and looking at that photo, saying, "But my fingers aren't like that. I can't play. How can I play a guitar?"
Well, have you seen Keith Richards' fingers lately? I don't know how he plays guitars either.
Nor the hell do I, bro. That stumpy little index finger he's got.
I know, but they're riddled with arthritis. Have you noticed how bad it is?
It still becomes a nice bar, doesn't it, on your 5-string guitar? Just a bar going across.
Yeah.
I don't know which one it is. Yeah.
But
yeah,
you know, I'll always. Just to wrap up, guys, on this part, I'll always say to anybody that's you know interested in the blues, you know, and where it comes from. For me, I'll always point back, because these guys did. Go back to Robert Johnson and you know, negotiate that and spend some time with it, and and you know, if you're going to take this journey seriously, like we have for most of our lives. It's not going to end there, is it, Simon? It's going to open up dozens and dozens of artists, and you know, to the point now, Brad, where we're going to pass it on, and you're going to talk about another guy that Clapton loved.
Oh yeah, but even just to quickly wrap up on Robert Johnson, like he only recorded, was it 29 songs?
29 songs, bro.
29 songs, so influential to the world of blues, and you know, obviously made such a big impact on so many players. So that's just goes to show, doesn't it? And
can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I don't think this is an original thought. I'm not going to steal this thought. But I think I read it somewhere, guys. And if you want to check out where rock and roll came from, this someone said it to me, or I've read it somewhere. Go and listen to the 29 songs that you've just mentioned, Brad, by Robert Johnson and Elvis's Sun Records songs, Sun Sessions, and if you and that'll give you all of where rock and roll came from.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that.
Just hit it. Yep.
Did you say
it on the head? Hit it on the head in one. You just smacked it out of the ballpark, Andrew.
Oh, cheers, mate.
Nobody's arguing with that assertion. I think that's a pretty good pretty good place to start. You know, with all of those things. Yeah.
It was it's a very interesting story, the Robert Johnson one. So we encourage you to go and investigate. And like Andrew has suggested, maybe start your own journey if you haven't already done so, and discover this stuff, because it's not the sort of stuff you'll put on and listen to. I put it on and listen to like a historian now. I listen to it. I want to hear what's going on. I'll put it on when I'm in the background when I'm doing things, but I'll put it on when I'm driving and I'm on my own, driving home from a gig, and I'm listening to it, just intently listening, and you're hearing all the nuances, all the crackly recording, all the little speaking. You can picture them sitting there tapping their foot. It's a remarkable. You are a historian when you're listening to it. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's history.
I can't help but think like that, bro. I can't help but have, and I don't think that gets in the way of me being a blues man and appreciating the music. But I love hearing that
using
my technical side of my mind, if that makes any sense.
100%. And I feel that 100% that when we're listening to this stuff and talking about it after listening to it, we are discussing history. I mean, it's so we are historians, and this stuff is timeless because it'll be around forever. Let's be honest. So we go from Robert Johnson, to Big Bill Broonzy, another artist that influenced so many, including the great Eric Clapton. And this gentleman here has an interesting backstory, but his legacy, I mean, for me, I think he played a pretty pivotal role introducing the blues to Europe in the 1950s, which is my research this week. He's influenced everyone from Muddy Waters, Clapton, Dylan, countless blues and folk artists. I think he went from rural acoustic blues into the Chicago electric era So there's that crossover with him as well. There's some pivotal songs that Clapton has covered, quite a few of his songs, but a lot of artists have. He's got like a deep, resonant voice. He's got a percussive sort of finger style playing. Obviously, everything, he sings about everything, like from drinking to war, working class life, racism. This is what they all did, really. Let's be honest. And he did cross over from a acoustic to electric as well. And a big part of how the blues evolved is because of him. But there's a little bit of a backstory which I found interesting this week that I was not aware of. That well, they weren't sure of his age. There was
really?
there was a they said that he was born in either June 26, 1893 or 1903. August 15 to 1958, he died. So that's like a 10-year difference. So I don't know how that sort of, I mean, obviously record keeping and that back in those days, especially with, American blues singers and that probably wasn't like they do these days. But he definitely was that, what do you call it, that rural acoustic blues of the South, and then the Chicago blues followed. He had a career from the 20s through to the 50s, and I believe he had about 300 recordings. He plays very nimble guitar work. I mean, his guitar work's very, especially on an acoustic, guys. I mean, we all know an acoustic, especially, in those days, their acoustics probably weren't refined like our acoustics either. So if you listen to his acoustic work on songs like Hey, 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 Baby, Hey, that song, when you listen to his acoustic work on that, it's just incredible what he's doing there. And I was listening to it like late last night, driving back on my 50-minute trip from Burvale to home. And it was a really, I'm sitting there still discovering and hearing stuff that, wow, that's where Clapton got that from. That with, when you talk about Clapton Unplugged, for example, and he plays that song, and he plays it pretty traditionally. He plays it pretty spot on. He's pretty close. But yeah, it was a big role in that whole era, guys. I think he was a pivotal role for blues music. And transitioning from urban blues to Chicago blues, and he was a folk guy as well.
100%.
Yeah,
100%, bro. That folk part of him, especially, was what inspired Clapton. In that first documentary that came out, not the 12-bar one, the one that came out earlier in the early 2000s, they interviewed one of his girlfriends at the time when he was in Ripley, and she knows this album, and she says that he was listening to Key to the Highway, and that was the song, bro, that he was playing over and over and over again on his tape deck. And Tony makes a point about it here in the comments, and basically taught himself acoustic blues by listening to that song in particular, where someone from that time period, Simon, can say exactly what the song was.
Yeah.
Interesting. He also started learning to play the fiddle, and then switched to guitar after World War One. So, moving to Chicago in the 20s is where his career started, which was part of that emerging blues scene, really. And like I said, he was started off with that rural Southern style, and then adapted that more electric blues as he evolved. But you go back and listen to a lot of these cuts, and you can really, really hear how big of an influence he was to Clapton, especially. So,
cheers, bro.
But yeah, I don't know if your thoughts on Big Bill Broonzy, gentlemen. Simon, what your thoughts on him?
Yes, he did. Well, I don't know much. Yes, what's the one thing we know about Big Bill Broonzy? His real name's not Big Bill Broonzy. But yes, one of the really early guys, and as you say, that kind of transition through the, starting off with the early, folk blues, country blues, and then moving to Chicago, and then being reinvented in the 50s as a sort of folk, as a folk revival, part of the folk revival in the European thing in the 50s is interesting. That kind of the arc of his career, and the fact that he kept going for a long time. So up into he and I overlapped by 5 weeks. He was alive for another 5 weeks after I was born. But yeah, influence undeniable. With the taps and stuff, and you could see from the songs, you recognise the song titles, and yes, and amazing. And that kind of, reinventing himself as he went along. I think, it's become a trademark, isn't it? That for artists, reinventing themselves and then going back to what they did first, looping back with the
paying the bills, Simon.
Paying the bills, yeah. Well, and then you get that, that European, as I said, that European folk revival of the 50s, kind of, which feeds into Dylan and all that 60s stuff. Very much what he was doing in the, the late 20s and early 30s. Before the Chicago blues stuff. So yes, like a lot of artists, you start off, then you change and do something else, then you go back to what you did first later on in your career. So, but well, again, well worth checking out. And as I say, the crackling and the thing only add to the atmosphere of those songs and their performance.
True, 100%.
Yeah, and. And guys, I've spent time with Big Bill over the years too, listening to him on days on end to try and work him out. And as you say, Brad, that transition that he had from different periods in his career, is really, really interesting. And he's doing that on purpose, because that's the development of the music, Simon, going from, that Delta blues to Chicago, and then on that international, reinvention of authentic music by discovering that early stuff from the 20s and 30s that people were desperate for, that sincerity and authentic music, Brad, and he was a representative of that. And there's clips of him on YouTube, bro, playing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
it's late enough to have for there to be live clips of him playing.
Yeah, I love that. I love watching all that stuff. I have watched a bit of that this week. At the end of last week, after we decided to do this on the Monday, Tuesday, I was watching a fair bit of YouTube, just trying to soak up as much as this stuff, because I will admit, gentlemen, I haven't listened to any acoustic blues stuff for a while. It's been a few years at least, because I've been listening to a lot of electric blues.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what we do here, so as well, and you're a rocker. Yeah, and you're a rocker too, bro.
Yeah,
so,
I can't help myself. But no, I find that it's been a good journey to go back. Encourage everyone to do it, go back and rediscover these people.
Well done. Oh, exactly. And, and I think that's exactly what we want to do with these videos, Simon. It's a point of reference. It's what Clapton and Paul Kossoff did. And we're just paying them back as well too by saying, go and check out these guys as well, Simon. So the next guy on the list of the three great acoustic giants we've picked is a guy called Charles.
Yes, the great Charley Patton, widely regarded as the father of the Delta blues. And one of the earliest performers in this genre. He was born in 1887-ish kind of thing. So
yep.
started performing in the 1910s, and not many people we've ever talked about that started performing in the 1910s. Throughout the Mississippi Delta, and we were talking earlier about here we go, kids, analog, a real book, but it has a lot of stuff about Patton in it, which has been really interesting to reread. Brought up in sort of plantation, in the deep south, so far up the sort of up this river, where the only way of getting supplies was by boat. There weren't any roads, let alone a railroad, until later on. And that, and it's extraordinary to think that, somebody that we're talking about then in the 1880s, there weren't any roads. It was as I say, it came up the river, and he was typically one of 12 kids, and started, that in that sort of plantation tradition, working in the fields kind of thing. But he, he started playing from a very early age, and he had a very, and the recordings are very crackly and stuff. They have an atmosphere to them, but they're quite crackly. But he has a very distinctive musical style. He's a great singer and pretty complex guitar rhythms and quite a percussive technique. Apparently, he was a bit of a showman. He used to play the guitar behind his head or between his legs during performances, which kind of harks back to what I was saying earlier about that thing about you're playing in for dances and you had to get it upbeat and put on a show. And clearly he's putting on a show. If he's playing it behind his head, he must be one of the earliest people to start playing a guitar behind their head.
Pretty much.
Nothing. But I think that from his influence cannot be underestimated. Blues. When he died in 1934, so it kind of basically he died almost before it got started. Before Robert Johnson had actually recorded anything. But he's that influence of that folk gospel blues tradition that he kind of pulled together. Really, it was I'd argue that it was him as much as any being the father of it, doing it before anybody else really, and did some recordings in 1929 and stuff. But clearly, like a lot of these guys, he recorded about 60 tracks in his career as opposed to Robert Johnson's 40. But they weren't recording every day, but they were playing every day and going out and kicking it up, basically, making a living from doing it, but by playing live. Interesting, that, isn't it? How people make a living playing live now and not recording. It's
the other way around.
Well, it comes around in a circle, doesn't it? He was going out and making a living playing live, and now everyone goes out and plays live to make a living. So it's kind of all come round. But an extraordinary kind of ghostly sort of atmospheric. If you listen to the recordings, they're amazing. And his singing's amazing, and what he does is kind of there is a kind of ethereal otherworld quality to those recordings, and his voice. I think you could say that about Robert Johnson too. I think that maybe it's a mark of those recordings and the way they did them, and what they did, that they have that slightly otherworld quality. But
and that style, it was certainly that style of singing too. And I'm going to paraphrase what Keith Richards says about Charley in his biography. That he was the guy that inspired a lot of the other famous guys, without being disrespectful to Charley. He was the guy that that Muddy Waters, for example, was listening to. Brad, when you think of that, Simon, actually, wow, the great Muddy Waters was listening to Charley and studying Charley. Wow.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It is it is really interesting that those 60 recordings, that brief career, and yet the influence, the ripples of that influence spread out across the music of the future, and influenced those people. Not only Muddy Waters, lots of other people as well. And into rock and roll. Amazing.
Wow. Brad's played his guitar on stage, behind his head, sliding across the stage on his knees, still playing his guitar with the crowd screaming. I bet.
Oh dear. Really, Brad?
Yeah.
Tell us more. Tell us more about sliding across the stage on your knee.
I've done it all, Simon. I've done the
I've done it all.
I used to have a guitar wireless, and there's a Melbourne casino here. Used to be a venue there called Mercury Lounge, and we used to play the Guns N' Roses tribute there once every few months. We'd go there, and used to run out through the crowd onto the bar. And we're talking about, Mercury Lounge was a pretty high end sort of venue. So it was all cocktails, and not just beer and whiskey and it was all cocktails and all that sort of thing. So I'd jump up on the bar and run along the bar, and I'd kick people's drinks over deliberately, and they'd just be like, yay, But I stopped doing all that one night, guys, when I ran. It was a venue out on the eastern side of Melbourne called the Dorset Gardens Hotel, and part of the establishment, or the people that used to go there to that establishment, were our lovely bikey friends. And you'd run up to the back of there and give them high fives as you're walking through the crowd, and I'd run up the back there with my guitar. And then on my way back to the stage, I got ambushed. They tried to take my top hat. This is when my hair was long, so they're pulling my hair, thinking it's a wig, and they're pulling my hair, and there was I got lucky to got back on stage alive. So I'll never doing that again.
So what you're telling
was
us?
that Comancheros or Bandidos?
No. These were just Harley Davidson fans. They weren't a gang as such, but
still enough to try and pull the hair.
No, it wasn't those guys that did that. It was the rest of the crowd trying to get back on the stage.
Right, yeah.
This was
the groupies. The groupies.
This was during Paradise City, where I'd run out into the crowd, do the slash thing, and I will say this: you know how hard it is to play behind your head with a top hat on?
No,
very hard.
No, I can't play behind my head without a top hat on. Not a chance. Not a hope in hell. So, top hat or no. But what I'm saying, Brad, is that if you're still sliding down the bar in your 60s, you're doing all right.
Not bad.
Bruce Springsteen was sliding across the stage on his knees in his 60s. So
there you go.
You got another 100 years before you're keeping up with the boss.
Not that far. But look, I'm a bit tamer these days. But
stick to the stage. It's safer.
Well, I've always said it. I prefer to be on the fallback wedge. I prefer to be that side of the stage than the other side.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're a good barrier wedges, aren't they? Fallback monitors. They're a good barrier. It's like, it's enough.
I don't like it when venues want to try and get you to use in-ears all the time and no fallback wedges. I don't like that. I prefer a wedge.
Yes. And then, but what do you? If they take away the wedges, what do you put your foot on doing your solo?
That's what I'm saying. I've got nowhere
then you have to start taking something to put your foot on. I mean, that doesn't work, does it?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
No, it's true. A fallback wedge is very important in rock and roll.
Yeah. See. not just for its sound quality purposes. Quality, yeah. So anyway, back to Mr. Patton.
Enough about me,
Charlie.
So yeah, basically his recording was 5-year period. He didn't record till 1929, and died in 34. So but he worked with people like Sunhouse as well, stuff. But I think his influence is undeniable, and as a pioneering artist in the blues tradition, blues folk tradition.
Yeah. So, and because the recordings, Simon, are so crackly, and they got that hauntingness to them. Because of that, it gives a bit of character to the, and it does. If you listen through headphones, you can sort of pick up. You can only just put yourself imagine how it would have been like back in those days. You know what I mean? It's an era. It puts you back there.
100%, bro. And I think that's one of the great things that I like about this music. And again, the early Chicago stuff that I've been listening to a lot lately, Muddy Waters and Leroy Foster, 46, 47, 48, 49 with one mic and through small little 10-watt amps. It's just getting that vibe, bro, and there's no effects, Simon. It's just the musician, the guitar players, slap bass, as an example, a harp player playing through a mic, and that's it. No pedal boards, bro, nothing. No.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the sort of sociological things, if you're born into poor rural background, you're only going to get an acoustic guitar. It's only the advent of of kind of industrialization and a lot of black people moving up the Delta to Chicago and the urban and getting jobs, that you can then afford electric guitars and amplifiers and things. It's clearly it's a different order of spending magnitude than just getting an acoustic guitar that you can take round and play wherever you are without your self-sufficiency. Is great, isn't it? Whereas with electric guitar, you need an amp, you need power, and you need but you have a drummer and things like that. So it's you can see that kind of, it parallels the sort of the move to the urban industrialization of America. It's paralleled in that having electric instruments and drum kits and having bands and things rather than doing it on your own.
Yep. And that attitude as well, Simon. Muddy Waters famously liked Leroy Foster when he, out of all the guitar players, because he wasn't just interested in playing Delta blues loud like a lot of them were, through amps or whatever, or through pickups, Brad. He was playing it differently, Brad. He didn't want to just be loud. He wanted to be abrasive. He wanted to be edgy. He wanted to dive on that stage on his knees, bro.
Yeah.
Brad taught him everything he ever learned about sliding on your knees across the stage.
I wish.
Oh, look, and Tony asks a wonderful question. And maybe I'm just thinking out loud, just to end this session off, maybe next week we should come back and talk about some Resonator Steel players, guys. I don't know. It's a question.
Yeah.
It's a question.
It's the same question as, do you think I'll run out of albums anytime soon? No. And you're right, Tony. We could go into Resonators. We go just I'm Charley Patton's slide player, and they all played slide as well, which is interesting. But slide, banjo, there's all those different genres, all those different people doing slightly different things. So absolutely, it's a really good shout.
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing that at some stage. because I know we're just going to wind up the show a little bit, so I'm going to do some show business while we're live, guys. So we've got Jim locked in to do Robert Cray with us, and
beautiful.
Not next week, because in my mind I thought next week we were going to do part 2 of
Black
Crows, and then I suggested to Jim that we do Robert Cray's Strong Persuader album the week after, Brad. Does that work with you guys?
I'm happy, but I think maybe next week the Robert Cray thing, if he's available, might work better. And because I have got a late flight coming back from Darwin next week, and I don't know whether I'm going to be 100% on time for this show or not. So that might work better.
Brilliant.
So that might work better. Yeah.
What brilliant that he's not turning up. Or no, not that.
No, what I'm saying is I'm not 100% sure whether if a flight ends up late or something, then I'm stuffed. So,
no problem. So we'll touch base with Jim over the next couple of days. Hit the notification button, and if all goes well, Simon, if you've got your device there, if you want to send Jim a message now, please, asking him if he's available next week to do Strong Persuader with us. We'll book that in.
Because I was going to mention that after the show to you gentlemen, but you beat me to it, Andrew, again.
That's right. It's okay. It's all right, bro. Yeah. That'll be fine. And if you want, you can just jump in. Otherwise, the Rock Professor and I and Jim will.
I know the album backwards. I used to have it on.
I know you do.
Yeah, great album.
Yeah, I know
great
you
album.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, put it in for next week if possible. That'd be great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's been really, really cool. Not only hanging out with you, Simon and Brad, talking about these guys, that mean a lot to us, as bluesmen ourselves, and being part of that journey we've had by discovering this music. And we talk about it often, haven't we, Brad, over so many years on this channel, where we're always going to do a shout out to Richards and to Mick Jagger, and to Eric Clapton, because they were the guys. I wouldn't have known anything about Robert Johnson if it wasn't for Eric Clapton. It's a fact.
100%. Yeah.
It's a fact.
100%. Well,
he made back, not going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. He made me want to go discover, what it's all about. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing here, folks, on this channel. This is our payback to these guys. We've only picked 3, but there's a multitude. But if you are watching on a replay and you are inspired to go and check these 3 artists out, you have our word that you won't be disappointed. I will give you a warning if you are new to this, that it will open up a door and it will consume you, Brad and Simon. It will put you on a path where you won't back off.
No, true. You'll be consumed by it in a good way.
Yeah, but if you want to know where it came from, this is where it came from. These are the fathers of of Eric Clapton and what all those electric blues players are doing in the 60s, and all the bands that we know and love. This is where they got it from. This is where it came from. This is the wellspring of what they were doing, what they took forward. Electricity. So get past the crackles and the atmospheric recording, but they're fantastic and spooky and brilliant.
Yeah. So guys, I just want to ask you one question before we end the show. So, Brad, you mentioned Crossroads, the song Crossroads by Robert Johnson. I remember listening to Cream's version for years before I heard Robert Johnson's version. Key to the Highway, I remember hearing Eric Clapton and Derek and the Dominoes version, Simon, for years before I heard Broonzy's version. And I got to say, when I heard the originals, or these early guys' versions of the original, maybe, you know, because there could be some dispute about actually who wrote it.
Surely not. Sure, that only happened in the 60s.
And also, it made sense, Brad. You know, listen. So then going back to listening to Cream's jam, 10-minute jam of Crossroads, made more sense to me when I heard Robert Johnson's version. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Total sense.
Well, because, you know, you could dress it up into a 10-minute song, but actually the original 3-minute, you know, acoustic, you know, is still a fantastic song and a fantastic, you know, performance and everything. You know, it has a thing. You know, it's that thing. Is you know, the best song, all the best songs you can play on an acoustic guitar and just with a voice. You know, the trappings of, you know, 10-minute guitar solos and jamming and all that stuff is you know, is the icing on the cake. Is not the cake, which is the actual song.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think you know, the way I was talking about it before, with Clapton, like taking a song like Crossroads and making it his own. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really. They're a blueprint. They're a passage of time, and they're recorded that way. They're recorded, like I said. Robert Johnson had his own timing. You know, the way he recorded the song, his timing is where his vocal phrasing would come in would be different to where you would think a vocal would come in, but that's just how he perceived that vocal to come in. But then you hear Clapton play Cream. He's been playing it for what, 50 years or something, maybe more.
Only, yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's playing a different evening now. He's still reinventing that. So what I'm saying is they're good blueprints for these guys, and they're able to put their own spin on it through time. You know what I mean? And evolve the song.
Yeah, and you know, there's another point here. You know, the Stones '69 tour. You know, when Keith and Mick are on stage, and Keith is playing the Resonator. You know, Mississippi Fred McDowell. You know, and Prodigal Son, and you know, and you go back and listen to the original versions. You know, and listen to what Keith and the Rolling Stones and Mick are doing. Boy, I tell you what, they capture that. These skinny guys from London, Simon. You know.
Well,
you know, you know, there was definitely something going on, and you know, and I appreciate that. One other little point, guys. You know, we're talking about, you know, some of these guys, you know, coming out of the cotton fields, basically from the deep south. You know, Cream do a wonderful version of Rolling and Tumbling. If you go back and listen to Leroy Foster's version in 1950, he was recording with, I think, Marty Walters, and they do a couple of versions of Rolling and Tumbling. You know, that wailing that they do between the song, you know, that's what the slaves used to do when they were picking cotton for hours on end. And it's like, when you listen to that, it's like, you talk about haunting stuff. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Well, it's a work song, Simon.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, well, that's where it all comes from, doesn't it? As you say, working in the fields and entertaining yourself for work song stuff. You know, all the response, all of those things are all rooted in that.
Yeah.
All right, boys, are we out of here?
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Was really good. I think this, you know, doing these things has been really interesting. To delve back into those recordings has been fantastic. So.
100%.
If you're going to, as I say, with Charley Patton and with Robert Johnson, you know, there's not huge amounts to listen to. You know, they're all on Spotify. You can go find Big Bob Broonzy's got lots more, but you know, Robert Johnson and you know, you find King of the Delta Blues. You know, that's really all you need to know about what Robert Johnson's about, and the same with Charley Patton. You know. There are the 1929 recordings that tell you all you need to know about Charley Patton for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, investigate them, they're fantastic. They're worth it.
Oh, it's worth it. You won't be disappointed spending some time, for sure. Simon, you want to do a shout out?
I will do a shout out to. We've had lots. Fantastic. Tony Bowen as well is doing fantastic stuff. Thanks, guys. Arvin, of course. Phil Byers. Phil, thank you very much for all your comments. Really good. Ellen, nice to see you, Ellen. Fantastic reminiscences of Brad sliding on his knees down the bar. Fantastic. Albert Arthur past tips. Fantastic. Thanks, Arthur. Helene O'Hara, and thank you, Helene, for your super chat. That's very kind of you. And Mr. Walton has been chiming on. Jonathan Nicholas as well. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining in. Fantastic comments as well. Really good. Ellen, Arvin. We had Gretch Zeppelin further up. I see you, Gretch. Hope you're good. Yeah. Hope I got everybody. Tony, Albert, Ellen. Yeah. So cool. Thank you very much, all, for another great show. And we'll see you next week, hopefully. For I sent Jim a message for Robert Cray.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
We'll keep you updated.
Yeah, if we don't do Robert Cray, we'll do the Resonator guys. Yeah, because we need Brad for the proper part 2 of the Black Crows and Jimmy. So
yeah,
and his private plane doesn't get in.
Yeah, it depends on my private jet if it gets in on time or not. Yeah. So.
All right, bro.
Take care, all. Have a good week.